During the Ming Dynasty, at the foot of the Divine Dragon Mountain, lay a small village called Zhang Family Village. In this village, there was a family who had been herbalists for generations, making their living by gathering medicinal herbs. By the time the practice reached Zhang Yugen, no one could recall how many generations had passed. Zhang Yugen's approach to herb gathering was different from others. Every time he ventured into the mountains, regardless of the size or quality of the herbs, he would only take 5 plants. Because of this, people jokingly called him John 5, given the proximity to the mountains. Most villagers made their living by gathering herbs, and many had grown wealthy from it. Yet, Zhang Yugen alone remained in poverty. Others laughed at his foolishness, but he would say, "We gather herbs only to save and heal people. It's a necessary act. Plants are not without feeling. They sacrifice themselves to rescue lives from suffering and alleviate illness. We must allow them to leave descendants." Zhang Yugen's wife, Madame Wan, also came from a poor family. Kind and virtuous, she never complained about her husband's ways. Thus, although their life was frugal, it was filled with harmony. Perhaps due to the hardships she endured in her youth, Madame Wan had always been frail, relying on medicine year-round, yet Zhang Yugen never resented her for it. He always hoped she would recover soon, but fate can be cruel. In recent weeks, her condition had suddenly worsened. After consulting a physician, Zhang Yugen was told that his wife was beyond cure. No amount of medicine could save her. Though he had braced himself for this news, Zhang Yugen was still devastated. The thought of his wife suffering alongside him all these years filled him with deep regret. One day, after lying unconscious for days, Madame Wang suddenly awoke and expressed a craving for a bowl of braised pork. Surprisingly, she looked radiant, unlike someone on the verge of death. But Zhang Yugen knew it was a final rally before the end. To fulfill her last wish, he hurried to town and brought back a bowl of braised pork on credit. By the time he returned home, his wife had fallen asleep again, so he placed the bowl on the stove outside the house. It was not until midnight that Madame Wang awoke. Seeing her awake, Zhang Yugen rose to fetch the pork, but as he opened the door, something strange happened. Under the moonlight, 2 weasels, one large, one small, were crouched on the stove, eagerly eating the braised pork. At the sight, Zhang Yugen flew into a rage and rushed to shoo them away. To his astonishment, the weasels showed no fear. Instead, they stood their ground and stared back at him. As he drew closer, Zhang Yugen saw that they were a mother and her young. The mother's fur had fallen out in patches, her bones visible beneath. She looked frail and gaunt. Yet, despite her condition, she did not compete with the young one for food, merely standing by protectively. Moved by compassion, Zhang Yugen quietly turned and went back inside. "Yugen, where is the pork?" Madame Wan asked weakly from the bed. "I'm sorry, my dear," Zhang Yugen replied guiltily. "When I went to get it, I saw Mother Weasel and her young eating it. They looked so pitiful. I couldn't bring myself to chase them away. They've eaten it all." He expected his wife to scold him, but instead, she smiled and said, "Perhaps it's for the best. Even if I had eaten that bowl of pork, it wouldn't have cured me. Perhaps it will save their lives instead. Don't worry, my dear. I'll go to town again tomorrow and make sure you get that bowl of pork." Zhang Yugen reassured her. "Don't waste the money, Yugen. I know my time is near likely within the next few days. I've burdened you all these years, and I'm truly sorry. Thinking of my impending release, I'm no longer afraid. After I'm gone, you should remarry quickly. A home is not complete without a woman." Hearing his wife speak of her final arrangements, the usually steadfast Zhang Yugen could no longer hold back his tears. He held her and wept bitterly. Before dawn the next day, Zhang Yugen rose early to fetch another bowl of braised pork. Just as he was about to leave, a series of cries echoed from the yard. Rushing out, he found the mother and young weasel had returned. This time, each held what looked like roots in their mouths. Placing them by the doorstep, the weasels departed. Puzzled by their behavior, Zhang Yugen examined the roots. Just then, the physician arrived to check on Madame Wang. Before entering, he asked, "Yugen, how is your wife?" Zhang Yugen sighed. "Not well, I'm afraid. This morning, she hasn't eaten or drunk anything." The physician shook his head helplessly, but as he stepped inside, his eyes fell on the roots in Zhang Yugen's hand. With one glance, he froze, then took the roots to examine them closely. Gradually, his expression changed. "Eugen, where did you get these?" he asked urgently. John Eugen explained the previous day's events, his wife's craving, the weasels eating the pork, and their return with the roots. "What? Brought by weasels, Eugen? Your wife can be saved?" The physician exclaimed excitedly. "Quickly, brew this into a medicine." Overjoyed, John Eugen prepared the herb and fed the decoction to his wife. Within an hour, her condition improved. After a day of treatment, she had recovered fully. 3 days after her recovery, the weasel mother and young returned. Delighted, the couple welcomed them and shared all the food they had. The weasels ate heartily, and from then on, they visited frequently. The Johns treated them as friends, and their bond grew strong. To John Eugen's surprise, the weasels began guiding him into the mountains to gather herbs. With an almost mystical sense, they led him to rare and valuable medicinal plants. With their help, the Zhang family's fortunes gradually improved. In Zhang family village, there also lived a man named Zhang Sanfeng, orphaned at a young age. He had been pitied and aided by John Eugen's father. As they were similar in age, Zhang Sanfeng regarded John Eugen as his sworn brother. However, unlike the kind-hearted John Eugen, Zhang Sanfeng was consumed by greed. While gathering herbs, he always feared not taking enough, yet ironically, the more he coveted, the less he found. His household remained in poverty. Out of brotherly loyalty, John Eugen often helped Zhang Sanfeng, even during his own lean times. One day, as John Eugen prepared to go out, Zhang Sanfeng rushed over in a panic. "Brother, my wife ... she's fallen ill," he cried. "If she's ill, find a physician." "Why come to me?" John Eugen asked. Zhang Sanfeng hung his head in shame. Seeing his hesitation, John Eugen pressed, "Speak up. Is it about money?" Zhang Sanfeng nodded. With a sigh, John Eugen went inside and returned with 5 taels of silver. "Take this and find a physician quickly," he said, pressing the money into Zhang Sanfeng's hand. Thanking him, Zhang Sanfeng hurried off. Over the next month, he borrowed another 16 taels from John Eugen. Despite the money spent, his wife could not be saved. After her death, Zhang Sanfeng changed. He idled at home, listless and despondent, fearing his decline. John Eugen offered to take him herb gathering. Having heard of John Eugen's good fortune with the weasels, Zhang Sanfeng eagerly agreed, but on their first trip, John Eugen set a strict rule: they could only gather 5 plants per trip. Restrained from taking more, Zhang Sanfeng chafed with frustration. His greedy nature simmered, and he began to scheme. Though his life improved under John Eugen's guidance, Zhang Sanfeng felt no gratitude. Instead, resentment festered, and darker thoughts took root. One day, as they entered the mountains, the weasel pair led the way deep into the wilderness. Suddenly, pain cries echoed ahead. Alarmed, John Eugen rushed forward to find both weasels trapped in hunting snares. Frantically, he worked to free them. But as he bent over the snares, Zhang Sanfeng, standing behind him, smirked. "Sanfeng, stop staring and help," John Eugen shouted. Slowly, Zhang Sanfeng approached. Then, in a sudden move, he raised his herbal hoe and struck John Eugen on the back of the head. Caught off guard, John Eugen collapsed, unconscious. Not content, Zhang Sanfeng struck several more blows until John Eugen stopped breathing. He then dragged the body to a nearby cliff and threw it over. Next, he hurled the young weasel after him. As for the mother weasel, he knocked her out, freed her from the snare, and bound her tightly with rope to prevent escape. Why would Zhang Sanfeng commit such a heinous act? Pure greed. He had long envied John Eugen's luck and resented his restraint in gathering herbs. Zhang Sanfeng's plan was simple: trap the weasels, kill John Eugen during the rescue, evade his debts, and then use the weasels to guide him, without restrictions, to gather as many herbs as he wanted. After composing himself, Zhang Sanfeng carried the bound weasel home. Instead of informing Madame Wang immediately, he hid the weasel and devised a story. As dusk fell, he leisurely visited Madame Wang. She, growing anxious her husband hadn't returned, was about to seek out Zhang Sanfeng when he appeared. "Sanfeng, where is your brother?" she asked. Pretending confusion, he replied, "Sister-in-law, hasn't he returned? We didn't go together today. I felt unwell and turned back early. He went into the mountains alone. Alarmed, Madame Wang cried. He's still not back. Could something have happened? Don't worry, sister-in-law. He's gone alone before, and the weasels were with him. Zhang Sanfeng feigned reassurance. Though slightly comforted, Madame Wang spent a sleepless night filled with worry. By the next morning, with still no sign of her husband, she sought Zhang Sanfeng's help to search the mountains. He agreed and led a group into the woods, but they returned empty-handed. Days turned into weeks. Zhang Sanfeng repeatedly suggested that Zhang Yugen had been killed by wild beasts. Initially skeptical, Madame Wang eventually accepted the grim truth. Under Zhang Sanfeng's arrangements, she held a grand funeral for her husband. After Zhang Yugen's death, Zhang Sanfeng showed Madame Wang great care and attention. Villagers praised him for his loyalty, and Madame Wang, unaware of the truth, began to trust him. Seizing the opportunity, Zhang Sanfeng enlisted a matchmaker to propose marriage. But Madame Wang refused, stating that she must observe a 3-year mourning period before remarrying. Undeterred, Zhang Sanfeng persisted in his attentions, yet she held firm. Gradually, she saw through his unreliability. Frustrated, Zhang Sanfeng grew bolder. Several nights, he intruded into her home, harassing her. Unable to endure it much longer, Madame Wang prepared to fight back. One evening, as she sat at home, she heard footsteps outside. Gripping a wooden club, she resolved to confront him, but suddenly, the footsteps stopped. As she moved to investigate, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Stunned, she stood frozen. Just then, more footsteps approached from the yard. The figure quickly pulled her inside. Don't be afraid. Open the door, it whispered, hiding under the bed. Composing herself, Madame Wang opened the door to find Zhang Sanfeng. Surprised by her welcome, he hesitated. Sister-in-law, have you had a change of heart? Why are you waiting for me tonight? He asked cautiously. Madame Wang smiled. What's wrong? When I kept the door shut, you insisted on entering. Now that it's open, you're afraid. Are you a man or not? I've thought it over. I was afraid you wouldn't come. Encouraged, Zhang Sanfeng eagerly stepped inside. But the moment he entered, a familiar voice spoke from the shadows. Terrified, he scrambled out of the house and fled. The figure that had hidden was none other than Zhang Yugen, who had not died, after all, after being pushed off the cliff. His fall was broken by a tree, saving his life. The young weasel had also survived, landing at the base of the cliff where its cries attracted a group of weasels. They carried both Zhang Yugen and the young weasel to a nearby cave. Then, venturing deep into the forest, they gathered life-saving herbs. Chewing the herbs and feeding them to Zhang Yugen, they nursed him back to health. After 3 months, he recovered fully. Instead of immediately confronting Zhang Sanfeng, Zhang Yugen watched from the shadows, seeing his former brother harassing his wife. He hid under the bed to scare him away. Shaken to his core, Zhang Sanfeng fled home. Fearful that his crime would be exposed, he decided to flee after one final, desperate act. Strangely, since capturing the mother weasel, she had refused to eat or drink, and no matter how he treated her, she would not guide him to herbs. Unbeknownst to him, the weasels had learned of Zhang Yugen's survival. One night, the mother weasel grew restless and tried to leave before dawn. Thinking she was finally ready to lead him, Zhang Sanfeng released her. As she headed into the mountains, he followed eagerly, but the weasel moved erratically, pausing and glancing back at him. Unconcerned by her odd behavior, Zhang Sanfeng pressed on. Soon, she led him to a remote part of the forest, rich with rare and precious herbs. Overjoyed, he began gathering them recklessly. Suddenly, a pack of hungry wolves emerged from the undergrowth. Before he could react, they attacked and devoured him. The weasel had tried to warn him along the way, but he hadn't understood. As the old saying goes, when a weasel looks back, it's either to repay a kindness or to seek revenge.